Hi lovelies! So they say the way to a man's heart is through his stomach, and since Father's Day is just around the corner, I thought it would be fun to share an absolutely decadent dessert recipe inspired by my dad's very favorite ice cream flavor, Mocha Almond Fudge. Today we are making a Mocha Almond Fudge ice cream cake, and the base for this amazing cake is actually brownie. Yeah, there is a lot to love about this. Now, just before we get to today's recipe, I know a lot of you guys are going to be asking in the comments about my headscarf. Now, I have been practicing my social distancing for more than 3 months now, which means no haircuts and no hair color. And I have to tell you, at this point, the situation is getting a little dire. So until the salons reopen where I live, I'm going to be wearing a headscarf. I hope you like it. It's actually kind of great to have my hair up in the kitchen. Anyhow, without further ado, let's get cooking. So our first step here is going to be preparing our pan. Now, as you can see, I am using what's called a spring form pan. This isn't mandatory, but it is going to make your life so much easier when it comes to removing your cake. And the reason why is because a spring form pan, the bottom actually comes out. So once your cake is completely set and frozen, we can basically just remove the sides and you'll have your cake all ready to go. Now, to prepare our pan, I am going to be starting with some melted butter, and I've just got a pastry brush here, and I want to just brush the inside of my pan really liberally with my butter. Now I'm going to be brushing both the bottom of my pan and the sides of my pan because I want to make sure that nothing sticks. I'm also going to be adding an extra layer of protection by using some parchment paper on the bottom of my pan. This is just going to ensure that my brownie does not stick to it. What I like to do is actually butter the parchment paper as well. That way, when you go to remove it, it's super, super simple to do. For the delicious brownie base in this recipe, you always have the option to use a store-bought brownie mix, but you might be surprised to find out just how easy brownies are to make from scratch. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. This is a really simple and foolproof recipe. I hope you will give it a try. Now it all starts by mixing up our dry ingredients. So as you can see, I've got a little bit of all-purpose flour in my bowl here, and to that I'm just going to add some cocoa powder. I like using Dutch processed cocoa powder in all of my baking, but you can really use any unsweetened cocoa powder you have on hand. We'll just whisk those together until they're really well combined, and then we can set them aside while we get to work on mixing up our wet ingredients. To start, I am going to be adding some melted butter to a large mixing bowl. And it's still quite warm, and that's important because it's actually going to be used to melt my chocolate. Now for this recipe, I am going for double chocolate goodness. So I've got my cocoa powder and my dry ingredients, but I'm also going to be adding about 2 ounces of semi-sweet chocolate. You can see I've got them just nicely chopped up. And I'm just going to whisk them together in that nice warm butter until the chocolate is completely melted and incorporated. Then we're gonna go ahead and use that same warm butter to help start to dissolve our sugar as well. So in this recipe, I have got some white sugar headed into my bowl. Now I've seen this done with brown sugar instead, but I prefer white sugar in this particular recipe. I think it gives you a much nicer texture. Our next step is going to be adding our eggs to this. So I have 2 eggs here, and it's important to add your eggs after that butter has had a chance to cool down a little bit. Otherwise, you'll end up with scrambled eggs, and that is not what we are going for. Chocolate scrambled eggs just don't sound very delicious. I'm also going to add some vanilla extract to this. And I'm just gonna keep on whisking until that mixture is very well combined. And then for the final step, I'm actually going to leave my whisk behind, and instead I'm going to use a spatula to basically mix in my dry ingredients. So I'm gonna get all of this flour and cocoa powder mixture into this bowl, and I'm gonna slowly start to work it in using my spoon. As your batter comes together, you'll notice that it's really rich and chocolatey and thick. That is a really good sign, and it means it is time to pour our batter into our prepared pan. Once my batter is in the pan, I'm just going to use my spoon to smooth it out as best I can. And then I'm going to get it into my oven, which has been preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit for between 25 and 30 minutes, or until a toothpick inserted into the center of it comes out clean. At this point, my brownie base is completely done. I'm just going to remove it from the oven, and what I want to do is allow it to cool completely before I add my ice cream layer on top. So the first thing I'll do is let it cool to room temperature for about 15 or 20 minutes, and then I'll get it into the refrigerator and let it chill in there for another 15 to 20 minutes or until it's totally cool. While our brownie base is in the refrigerator chilling, we're gonna get to work on making our incredible Mocha almond ice cream for this yummy cake. And guys, you will not believe how simple this is. Now, if you've never made 2-ingredient, no churn ice cream, it's basically going to change your life. That's what we're going to be using in this recipe today. So it all starts with some cream. Of course, it is ice cream after all. And we are using 35% whipping cream, otherwise known as heavy cream, depending on where you are. Just look for the number 35% on the container when you buy it. And the second ingredient is something called sweetened condensed milk. It's basically just a combination of some evaporated milk and some sugar, and it comes together in this amazing sweet, creamy syrup that is perfect in desserts. And the best part is, once you've got this base, you can really add anything you want to it. So the flavor possibilities are virtually endless. Like I said, today we are making a yummy mocha almond fudge flavor. So to do that, I'm actually using some instant espresso powder. You can usually find it with the other instant coffees at your supermarket. I'm also going to be adding a good splash of vanilla extract to this to add a bit of that vanilla flavor. And basically when it all comes together, it's going to sort of taste like a vanilla latte. So there's a latte to love, wouldn't you say? Then I'm just going to get in here with my hand mixer and give this a really good blend. You really want to let this mix up for 2 to 3 minutes at minimum. You want it to be nice and light and fluffy. We want to beat a ton of air into it to make sure our ice cream has a really beautiful texture. Okay, so I want to take a minute and just show you how thick this has gotten. It's super rich, lots of air has been beaten in, and that is a good sign. That means it's time to add our almonds to this. So I'm using some slivered toasted almonds. I just want to fold those almonds in really gently, and then I just want to pour this mixture over top of my chilled brownie base. This is beautiful just as it is, but if you want to add one final touch just before it heads into the freezer to chill, I highly recommend doing a little ribbon of fudge. So this is basically chocolate sauce, the kind you use for sundaes, and what I'm going to do is just add a little bit to the top, and then I'm gonna stir it in to create just a bit of a fudge ripple. Now this beauty needs to hit the freezer for between 6 and 8 hours. It's really important that our ice cream sets up completely before we serve this. I know, the waiting is really hard. It's probably best to let this sit overnight if you can, so if you wanna make this a day in advance, you definitely could. I'm gonna get this into the freezer, and then once it's frozen, we can add our final garnishes, and let's be honest guys, do some eating. And once it's ready, you have the option to enjoy it just the way it is, or you can decorate it any way you like. I'm just adding some swirls of whipped cream and some whole almonds to make it extra pretty. Guys, this super decadent dessert may be a labor of love, but I promise you it is worth each and every second you spend because it tastes absolutely heavenly. I really hope you will give it a try for yourselves, and if you do, as always, be sure to tweet me, Instagram me, or Facebook me a photo because you know how much I love seeing your kitchen creations. All of the measurements and ingredients and full recipe is linked in the description box below, so you can find it there. And finally, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe because there is lots more deliciousness where this came from. Happy Father's Day!